And guess what? We are live.
Welcome back, everyone, to episode 3 of the Team Ninja Real Estate Podcast. Wow! I'm your host, Kelsey Dunlap, and I'm here with my amazing co host, Ralph Moody and Hank Bertodato. Today's episode is packed with valuable insights on how to boost your buyer agent compensation in light of your recent NAR settlement. We'll be diving into how you can not only navigate but leverage the changes from this settlement, especially in a buyer's market, and prepare for what to do when the market swings back into a seller's market. It's going to be an eye-opener for agents who are ready to take control of their earnings. But before we jump into our main topic, I have some questions that I researched for Hank and Ralph to answer on how the settlement was meant to work and how it's working.
Well, let's jump in then.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So, you got questions for us?
Yeah, why don't you just...
Very professional intro, by the way, Kelsey.
Yeah, she
thank
crushed it.
Yeah, you're like, pretty soon you're going to be a news anchor.
Maybe one day it will be. Here I am.
All right.
So what I want to know is, can you guys just give me a brief overview of the NAR buyer compensation settlement?
A brief overview of the settlement, besides the fact that it sucks.
We're
Yeah.
gonna get offed for this episode. I'm just gonna put that out there.
You know, I'm wondering if they have hitmen because, people are saying bad things and then they're just disappearing.
Yeah.
Yes, I think there's like a NAR mafia that we're banging into. What do you think?
It sucks. I can tell you that right now.
It does.
I mean, you've been in the business 25 years. I've been in the business 14, and what have I paid? Thousands of dollars to NAR over the years, and you're probably tens of thousands of dollars.
Absolutely.
To NAR,
and they just keep selling us out.
Yeah,
that's the bottom line. They keep selling us out.
Mm-hmm.
And we are going to jump into what to do instead of just dwelling on the fact that they sold us out, so you can maximize your profitability as an agent in this business. We're definitely going to touch on that. But I definitely want to talk about the settlement itself, the merits of it, and some of the things that I think have been problematic as well. And to start with, you have a lot of agents who are misinformed and really don't understand themselves how to explain it. And I realized this when I was on vacation on a cruise with a lawyer who asked me to explain it to him. And so what's the deal with this law change? And I said, well, first of all, there's no law change. Nothing has changed in the laws. Actually, we need some law changes, and we're going to get to that later. But this is a lawsuit settlement between the largest trade organization in the country and a bunch of evil attorneys who hypocritically want to claim that real estate commissions are too fixed because real estate agents usually end up getting paid between 2 and 3% on each side of a transaction.
So that's a total of 6%, right?
Right. So a bunch of lawyers, and honestly, the average commission was well below 6 anyway when this thing happened. But this lawsuit got launched by a bunch of lawyers who usually, when they take a case on a contingency, get paid between 30 and 40% of what they bring in.
Yep.
Now, here's the funny thing. There are a bunch of articles on the internet on different, like Avco, which is a legal, it's like the WebMD for lawyers, some other sites that used to say that. As a matter of fact, if you go in the Wayback Machine, you can still find them. But since that criticism has come of the legal profession, suddenly it's starting to get scrubbed from all these attorney websites, which I think is kind of funny. So that's a little bit of a digression, but the bottom line is that the National Association of Realtors was kind of fighting them off for a little bit, and then the DOJ weighed in on this as well. So if you're a realtor, you should really be pissed off at this particular administration's DOJ and what they have done to your profession, because it's disgusting. For all those people that think that real estate agents are overpaid, they haven't spent enough time in this profession to see how much real estate agents do for no pay at all.
Oh my
in order to earn that commission. And that's a whole nother conversation. But the merits of the settlement were very simple. The associations of realtors, the MLS boards, went from requiring real estate agents to put a listing in the MLS and offer compensation to a buyer's agent to completely forbidding them from offering compensation in the MLS. Doesn't mean you can't offer it, but suddenly now you have to play telephone with
Do
everybody.
you know how many texts I've been getting back and forth?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's so secretive.
Yeah.
Little notes in lock boxes,
Well,
super cute.
I think the
boxes.
problem, and I'm sure we're going to touch on this, but I think the problem I have is when an agent calls me and says, "Hey, how much is the compensation?" It's the first question.
Mhm.
It's not anything about the property. It's not, "Hey,
Right.
tell me about the home." Anything. It is, how much am I going to get paid? Is the seller offering any money? And to me, that just sucks.
Yeah, absolutely
So
sucks.
impersonal.
But you don't have to ask that question. And
No.
once we get to yours, I don't know what your solutions are, but I can tell you before we jump in that I have not asked an agent once how much they're offering,
No.
and I have written and gotten several offers accepted since the settlement and closed and gotten paid.
Yep.
And we'll get into that in a minute too, because I don't think you should be calling and asking.
No.
To be honest, I think the game has changed.
Yeah.
What other questions did you have? Do you think, does that satisfy, does that make you have a pretty clear understanding of the basics of how the rules have changed? And these are rule changes, not law changes. These are rules within our trade association. So if I wanted to go and start my own listing service that was not trademarked the MLS, if I wanted to call it the nudie listing system, the NLS, and have a nationwide system of
He's already
listings.
thought of this. The
Yeah.
NLS.
The NLS. And in the nudie listing system, if it wasn't associated with the National Association of Realtors, I could go ahead and do that because the law hasn't changed. It's just that organization has agreed not to do this anymore.
Right.
And it may be the end of NAR by the time it's over with. It may be the beginning of the end of their undoing that and a whole bunch of other things that they've done wrong because they've been really mismanaging the place. But this could be a sign of not them becoming completely extinct, but becoming much less of the only influence in the industry for sure.
Yeah. So, and I just want to make one point too that's really misunderstood is you had mentioned that the attorneys are making 30 to 40%,
Mhm.
right? So I did the math on the rest of, let's just call it 40% to the attorneys. The rest is 60% by
Mhm.
all of the plaintiffs in the case. Ralph, it comes down to $17 per plaintiff.
Correct. So once again, the consumer
The consumer's
didn't get
getting
anything.
screwed.
They didn't get.
They're getting
shit.
17
So how much
bucks
did
each.
how much did realtors make on this?
No, realtors lost.
We lost.
The
So we made
consumers,
nothing.
the consumers lost.
The consumers lost. So how much did the attorneys make?
Well, the attorneys, it was what was the total settlement? $900 and some billion
Billion with a B?
with a B, or no, I'm sorry, 900 million, almost $1 billion.
Yeah.
Actually, I should have had this number looked up, and 40% of that went to the law firm. All right,
just call it
so
$1 billion.
because they
So that means
usually
400 million
they
for
usually get
the
paid
attorneys.
between 30 and 40%, and they've been able to save
I
that
don't
their
know how
entire
that's not
careers.
price fixing.
So why isn't NAR more aggressively defending
It's
realtors
here's the
in
thing,
this
Hank.
case?
It's not price fixing, just like it wasn't price fixing for us.
Yeah.
It's a flat out lie to call it
Of
price
course.
fixing. There was no price fixing. It was market driven. That was really about the amount that you need it to be in order to make it work. When you factor in the amount of time and effort and money you spend on deals that don't close, on the money you spend to acquire a customer in the first place, the time you put in, the listings you take that don't sell, especially in the luxury space,
Yeah.
which you do a lot of. So, you were with a company previously that has a lot of $5 to $10 million listings.
Yeah.
But when you look at the market, 5 of those sell in a year.
Yeah.
So it's basically becomes a lottery ticket at that point. And how much money do you have to spend on one of those listings in order to keep that client happy? Because you have their $7 million house in your hands. If you're not showing them that you have a budget, and you better have the budget, because if you get paid, you're gonna get paid a lot of money. But how many of those properties are you marketing with a big budget that you never close?
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, and then that's a loss for you. It's a
It-
business
it's
because you
it's
are your business as a realtor.
It's
Right.
about a 30% chance that it's not going to close,
correct. It's is that what it is? 30% that it doesn't close at all
roughly,
So you may not
in the
get
luxury
paid.
space.
in the luxury space. Okay, no, that
Yeah.
makes sense. So Hank, what do you? I guess we should jump in. What are you doing exactly right now to strategize when working with your buyers, and what are you coaching agents that you work with to do?
Well, there's a couple different things. So one of the things that I want to just talk about is the fact that there is a lot of misconception. There's a lot of misnomers. And so from the standpoint, we'll take it in two directions. From a buyer standpoint, I'm just having the conversation with them and I'm just saying, look, at the end of the day, you're going to have to sign a buyer broker agreement with someone, whether it's with me or whether it's with another agent, whether it's with the listing agent. If you go directly to a listing agent, you're going to have to sign this document of how much you're agreeing to pay an agent to find you a property to buy. So we've got this conversation that's have, but at the end of the day, what I'm doing is because these buyers are very reluctant to sign anything.
Correct.
Very reluctant.
Yep.
So what I'm saying is, if I'm just meeting a buyer for the first time, I'm like, look, I've got 5 properties today, 5 properties set up. Let's just sign this buyer rep agreement for today. Let's sign it for today. Let's see if we like each other.
Right.
Okay. And then by the end of the 5, okay, which I have them all documented. I have the MLS sheets that are stapled to that buyer rep agreement to prove procuring cause. At the end of that day, I'm like, hey, you know what? Do you think I did a good job? Would you like to continue? Yes. Okay, great. Because I've always had the gift of being able to build a rapport within 2 to 3 minutes. And that's really helped my business with being able to do that. So after 5 showings, they get comfortable with me. And now they're like, okay, Hank, I get it. I see your value, because I show them the value along the way. That's the other thing. Like, I don't just like spit it off to them right in the very beginning. I show it within the 5 showings. I show it in that day that I'm with them. I try and drive them. I know a lot of agents like, I'm not driving around. I still try and drive them if at all possible.
So you're demonstrating market knowledge.
1,000%.
You're demonstrating that you are understanding what their goal is and that you're going to help them achieve it.
Yeah. And so, getting back to driving our buyers around, I think is going to be very, very big and a key thing when trying to get these buyer rep agreements signed. So, you're having these conversations. The little thing is let's just get it signed for today, because they're going to have to sign something, and you're supposed to get it signed before showing the property. So that's really where I'm at in terms of the buyer side. It's not always a perfect science. It's not always, every conversation is going to be a little bit different, but you have to say, look, a seller is probably willing to compensate me something, probably. But if they're not willing to compensate the full 3%, just note that you may have to come up with an extra 0.5%. You may have to come up with an extra 1.5%, something like that. But I'm going to show you my value and why I'm worth that extra 0.5%, that extra percent, that 1.5%, whatever it may be. But what I'm going to do first is I'm actually going to try and get the seller to fully compensate me 3%, because I believe that is what my value is. And some people are going to be like, well, you shouldn't say percentages. You shouldn't say this. Listen, at the end of the day, I have a value, and that is my value. And I will show you my value. Just like in my listing appointments, I have a value that I go by. And people could say, well, that's price fixing, Hank. I said, no, it's not, because they don't have to work with me.
So, so let me ask you this then: what do you say to the buyer that says, "Well, Hank, you're going to get that whole 3% compensated by the seller, but if you were only getting 2 instead of 3, that's an extra 1% that I could probably just got off of the purchase price instead," because that question is going to come up.
Well, I mean, if that's the case and that's very important to them, then we can always simply negotiate it. That's what we do at the end of the day is you have to be a good negotiator. So you look at it a couple different ways. What type of buyer is this? Is this an FHA buyer? Is this a VA buyer? Do they need help with closing costs? Is the seller willing to help with closing costs? Are they willing to give concessions? I hate that word concessions, by the way. I will just tell you that right now. I just wish that we would strip it from everything because it's so misunderstood, the difference between concessions and compensation.
Absolutely, yeah. They are
It's just
two
a
different
big
things,
difference in it.
and now they are getting muddied with lenders and maximum concessions because there are so many different ways in which that deal can be structured.
Mhm.
You have the listing broker paying the buyer broker directly.
Mhm.
You have the buyer paying their own broker directly. You have the seller paying the buyer broker directly. That's not considered a concession. But you have this fourth one that's hanging out there where you have the seller giving a buyer a credit for the buyer to pay their own broker, which actually is where it ends up being a compensation and a concession situation. And there are times when that's an appropriate way to go. You have 4 different ways to go. By the way, most boards are only talking about the first 3. They're not talking about the fourth. I saw finally for the first time a document with that on it. That's actually something that I was doing, believe it or not, Hank, 5 years ago.
Okay.
And I'm going to explain why. Um, most most associations had a rule that commission, and most laws were commission can't be, prior to the NAR settlement, negotiated as part of the deal. You're negotiating the deal. You can't negotiate commission, right? And if you're negotiating commission over and above what the offer of compensation, the published offer was at the time, you're breaking the rules unless you're doing it the way that I did it. And the way that I was doing it is I would have my buyer sign a buyer agency agreement. And let's say, for example, that buyer agency agreement was for 3%. Okay. And then the MLS that I belonged to, although there was no collusion, that rate ended up usually being 2.4% because it was an older MLS with an older population that just always did it that way. That was a 60-40 split in the old days of 6%, where the listing agent kept 60 and the buying agent kept 40. That was kind of their tradition in that market. So that meant that usually you got a 2.4% co-broke is what you saw. And I wanted to get 3%. So I created a document, and the document said in it that the buyer is instructing their broker to reject the offer of compensation from the listing broker. And instead, the buyer is in the contract asking the seller to give the buyer a credit of 3% of the purchase price for the buyer to turn around and then pay their own agent with. So we weren't negotiating commission. We were negotiating a concession because the commission had already been negotiated between myself and my buyer. Now, how do you think the other realtors in my market reacted to that?
They probably didn't like it.
They hated it. They hated it. They couldn't wrap their arms around the fact that my compensation with my buyer really isn't their concern. All they really need to be doing is negotiating their own bottom line with the client. Right? They could not wrap their hands around that, their arms around that, in their minds. It's not fair. This guy's getting paid more than I'm offering as the listing agent. That was literally how they thought. And I had it hard coded into an addendum. You wouldn't believe there were a handful of instances where the listing agent didn't read the full addendum and found out at closing that the seller had to give a 3% credit, and they never explained it to their seller. So now it was going to come out of their rear end because they were planning on paying 2.4 and now they have to pay 3. And they call me up, calling me names, all like I conned them. No, read the document, put it in front. It's not my job to explain it to you.
No.
It isn't. In fact, it's my job to hand it to you and let you explain it to your own client. So, this wasn't a new concept, I guess you could say to me. Actually, for someone like you, someone like me, you're a little newer, but I'm going to make more money in this situation. And my client's going to come out ahead in the situation as well, to be clear. It's not that I'm going to make more money at the expense of my customer or my client. I'm going to make more money at the expense of the agent on the other side of the transaction and their customer, because I'm the better negotiator.
I'm smarter than they are.
Yeah. And that's my job, is to be the better negotiator.
Mhm.
And so if you're in this business and you plan on staying in this business, which I know some people aren't, you need to learn to be a shrewd negotiator. Now, what do you do? What do you say when,
It's the art of negotiation.
absolutely.
Mhm.
What about when we talked about the buyer wanting to cut your commission? How do you address that?
A buyer wanted to cut my
Yeah, they
commission.
want to cut your commission. How do you address that?
So typically, again, I just try and come back to value and what my value is. But will buyers ask for kickbacks all the time?
Sure.
You know.
Yep.
But I usually just tell them, like, listen, there's 3 ways this is split. Okay, let's say it's 3%. Well, 1% goes to Uncle Sam, 1% goes to my broker, and I get to keep 1%.
Right. Right.
And that's usually, and the old trick is, I used to put 3 $1 bills down on a table.
Mhm.
And that's how I used to demonstrate it. I'd say, hey, I take $1 and say, this goes to Uncle Sam. I set it over here. Take another dollar, say, goes to my broker. Take my last dollar, this goes to me. And this is all my marketing, my hard work, my gas, my knowledge, everything is
Right.
in this $1.
I like that. I like that. That is a
Yeah.
really, I have not, you're the second person that I've talked to in the last month that uses actual cash as part of their presentation,
Yeah.
which I like. Mike here in our office does it with listing presentations, and
Yeah.
we're gonna one of these days have him sit down and talk about how he does that. But it works. The visuals work.
It does, and they just have to understand that we're just not getting the full 3%. People don't understand the time, the effort that goes into this.
Yes.
Like the prep work to set up 5 showings, to set up your day, to be able to drive and go there and then open. It's not just opening doors. I think that's a huge misconception.
Of course it is.
It's okay. This house is priced at this because, hey, it's got a canal behind it, and this house it's a different price. But that's because it's a freshwater canal versus a Gulf access canal. So, at the end of the day, they are paying for market knowledge as well. And so you just, as an agent, you just have to be able to show your value. You have to be able to be knowledgeable. You should be the most knowledgeable agent out there. I just think that agents, I don't have anything to do. Oh, business is slow, this and that. You should know your stats. You should know everything. You should know your inventory. You should be going out and seeing anything that's vacant, going out and see open houses. Because when that buyer comes across, you can be like, oh my gosh, I saw the perfect house for you. And it's over here. And I'm going to take you directly to it. And then they're going to say, well, you only showed me one house. And yeah, it's perfect, but it's still only one house. And I'm like, listen, it's because I've done my homework and I listened to you and I found out what was important to you. What are your wants versus what are your needs? Okay. And so.
And every once in a while, a blind nut finds a squirrel. I mean, a blind squirrel finds a nut, but
blind nuts finds a squirrel.
Blind nuts find squirrels too, sure. But that's definitely the exception and not the rule. Yeah, definitely the
100%.
exception. In 25 years, I could probably count on one hand how many times I walked out, showed a property to somebody, sold that property that day without any previous interaction or legwork or anything like that. Out of hundreds, over 1,000 transactions to be.
I can't even tell you how many showings I've had. I can't even tell you how many buyers that I've done work for that never closed.
Oh yeah.
People don't take that into account either. They don't understand all the legwork that we do. And I'm probably at thousands of buyers that I've done some sort of work for and have never got a single penny from them.
It's not an hourly paid job.
No, gosh, no. We're not getting salary. We're not getting hourly. We're not getting any of that.
You don't get paid until you close a deal.
Yeah.
And so many deals, just for whatever reason, there's a percentage that you have a fall through rate. If you're really, really good at this business, your fall through rate is probably somewhere between 20 and 30% still.
Yeah.
As far as total number of contracts you go into, whether it be listing agreements, buyer agencies, that end up not coming to fruition and turning into a deal for sure.
Mhm.
You know, you talked about $1 for me, $1 for Uncle Sam, $1 for my broker out of the three. I like that. The other thing that I tell my customers that I'm working with is I am going to fight really hard for your money, and I'm going to respect your money the same way I respect my own.
Right.
How much respect would I have for my money if I just said I didn't have any value and I'm going to go ahead and give up my my hard-earned dollars instead of turning around just fighting for more for you? And if I'm willing to do that with my own money, what would I be willing to do with yours? That's the question you have to ask when another agent tells you that they'll discount their commission. If they're if they place that little value on themselves and that little value on their own money, how little value do they place on yours?
Mhm. Absolutely.
Especially when you're buying the biggest purchase most people will ever make in their lives in their home.
Absolutely. I mean, how do you get around that? All right. Well, here's what I'm seeing, and here's how I'm tackling it with my team. Obviously, buyer commissions have completely changed. Before, we were used to sellers offering a published amount on the MLS, 1.5%, 2%, 2.5%, 3%, whatever it is the buyer's agent. But now, any commission being offered by the seller or the listing broker, to me, is irrelevant. So you talked about the fact that so many agents are calling and saying how much you offering. I never ask that question because I don't want the answer to be less than I'm asking for.
Yep.
And so if I ask them if you're offering anything and they're offering 2%, now I'm going to turn around, I'm going to write an offer and ask for 3%, and they're going to think, I already told this guy. Isn't he listening? I already told him we're only paying 2%. So I don't want to know what they're offering. I already signed a deal with my customer or client, depending on how it is. And my job is to get the seller to pay as much of that as possible. If that amount falls short, then we'll decide what to do with the difference. And I might write it off. The seller might pay it. It just depends, or I mean, the buyer might pay it. It just depends on the situation, how big the deal is, everything else. You know, I'm not against taking some of what I've worked for and using it to help my buyer. Happens all the time. Give a closing cost credit here, give a different credit there. You know, I've done it.
Sometimes you got to do it to make the deal work.
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
Yeah.
You know, and again, you're not a greedy person, you know, but you do want to be compensated fairly. But sometimes it just makes the most sense to be able to say, you know what, hey, you know, to make this deal work, I'm going to contribute $1,000.
Yep.
You know, and I throw that in the kitty.
Mhm.
You know, it doesn't happen every deal. It doesn't happen all that often, but it does happen. And you just have to be receptive to that. There's some agents that are like a hard no, and then the deal dies. And I'm like, wait a second, what are we doing? What are we fighting for? We're trying to get transactions to close. And we wonder why our close rate is so small, because we see a problem and then we clam up as agents. And then we're like, we go to our buyer and be like, hands up, we got to cancel. Let's
Right.
move on. Let's go find you another property. And then you've wasted all of that time when all you have to do is negotiate a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, one of the tactics that I use is I will pull a lot of comparable sales, especially in a market like this, that don't have to be exactly like that property, because what I'm doing is I'm looking for market trends, not necessarily comps, for what to offer. And what I want to look at is what percentage of list price are the average property selling in the marketplace for over the last 30 days? Is it 96%? Is it 98%? Is it 92%? What is that average? And I'm going to sit down with my buyer and I'm going to say, right now, listings are selling on average for X, 96.5% of list price. All right.
Of current list price.
Of current list price. Right.
Not original.
My goal is to save you more money than the average agent. So, yes, I'm charging you 3%. My goal is to get you at 95% of list price. And by the way, if we don't hit that marker on the property you like, I'm going to discount my commission for not hitting that marker for you and winning for you. And you wouldn't believe the reaction you get from them is, I'm going to beat the market by 1.5 points.
Mm-hmm.
So would you rather me, or would you rather a guy you're paying 2% to, who can't even compete with the market, you're going to walk in and pay 99%. And that's another thing that works. So I have my buyer sign a 3% commission buyer agreement up front, and I make it clear for them that I'm earning that commission by going to work for them. All right. I'm going to get them the best possible deal. I'm going to fight for it. Often that means that I'm up against a seller who's represented by a less experienced agent. So in those cases, we end up saving money for my buyer, and I ensure that I'm getting compensated for the skill that I bring to the table. Now, this new model is going to reward skilled agents like you and me, like I said before, those that hustle, those that have the negotiation skills to secure the best deal. Meanwhile, less skilled agents, well, they're going to get paid less. And ultimately, that'll cost their clients money because they don't know how to navigate this new playing field. And what was supposed to create transparency has now done everything but that. If anything, it's made the water murkier. And the key takeaway here, I think, is that as agents, we need to be transparent with our clients about how we're being compensated. And like you said, why we're worth every penny. This isn't just about fighting for your commission.
Yeah.
It's about proving your value.
Yeah.
And you really nailed that.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's such a great point, Ralph. And it's perfectly sets us up for the next segment. Now I'm going to touch on some of the recent headlines surrounding the NAR settlement and how these legal challenges are affecting the real estate industry as a whole. The National Association of Realtors, or NAR, is finding itself in hot water with legal challenges coming from all corners of the real estate world. Let's take a look at two specific cases that are getting a lot of attention right now.
Okay.
In Alabama, the state's Association of Realtors, or AAR, is pushing back against the mandatory membership model NAR currently requires. Members are beginning to express dissatisfaction with a rigid
Dissatisfaction. I can't get no dissatisfaction. Go on, jump in again. I just had I had to mess with you a little. I mean, we're still here to have fun. Anyway,
just poke my buttons.
So anyway, in Alabama, the state association is pushing back against the mandatory membership models. That you said. Okay.
Yeah. With a rigid structure that forces them to join at local, state, and national levels. The Alabama Association of Realtors recently sent a letter to NAR urging them to rethink this rigid structure, especially as the organization faces increasingly legal scrutiny at the same time.
Hold on, let me pause on that for just a second. So this is not the only association that's doing that. We'll get into the second example in a moment.
You're
but Ralph, you're kind of leading a charge right now that I think is very important with an open letter to NAR members.
Yeah, that's correct. It's an open letter to members, and we're going to jump into that. And I definitely want to hit on all the things that I think we need to do to make that work. But yeah, associations are pushing back, but my letter is to the members, not to the leadership, because we need to mount a pressure campaign.
So other realtors.
Yeah, to other realtors to say, listen, we need to mount a pressure campaign against our association to do the right thing. And we're going to jump in on that. Let's talk about what Michigan's doing. That's your home state, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
go blue.
Yeah. Go blue.
Didn't they win this weekend?
Yeah, they did. They did.
They're going to get beat by Ohio State this year, though.
You wish. You wish. I think we need to make a bet.
I'm not even from Ohio, but my wife is from there. My in-laws are from there. My best friend is from there.
Yeah, you're a Badger, right?
I'm a Badger, but they're never really in the conversation. So
my dad was a Badger.
Oh man.
But so yeah, Michigan agents actually suing NAR.
Yeah,
they're suing them, and their complaint is that requiring agents to join NAR in order to access the MLS violates antitrust laws. So how's that? Now they're getting a taste of their own medicine from their own members. And honestly, I love it because NAR's been selling us out. They've been absolutely selling us out for a very long time. I mean, let's go back to the fact that we are what are we called? Realtors. Remember when they would tell us something? Yeah. Don't say realtor with 3 syllables. I don't really care.
Wait a second. Hold on. Have you seen that Modern Family episode?
Is there one where they're talking about?
Oh my gosh! And what was her name? Gloria. She's like, it's not realtor, it's realtor.
And she still did 3 syllables.
Oh my gosh, she did. It was absolute. If you have not seen it, it's Modern Family.
Gotta see it.
Just check out that episode. It is hysterical.
So both cases are part of a growing wave of unrest with the real estate industry. More and more agents are calling for autonomy and alternatives to the existing system. And these legal challenges might just be the beginning.
It is the beginning. It's absolutely the beginning.
This brings us to Ralph.
It does, and we're going to jump in. There's an MLS out there called My State MLS.
Yeah.
I think I turned you onto that already. That is
I've been using it for years.
I have too, but it never got any traction. Now I think it has a good reason. It's a national MLS. It's not associated with NAR. They allow offers of compensation.
Right.
Pretty cool. Bottom line is we have to hold NAR accountable. We're talking about realtors, right?
Yeah.
The name Realtor is a trademarked name that belongs to the National Association of Realtors, right?
Yep.
What did they do with the name? Hank, what did they do with their name? They sold it. Realtor.com is not even owned or even licensed to.
No.
It was permanently sold off. That'd be like me selling off Ralph Nudie to somebody else.
Yeah.
Sorry, not doing it.
So who owns it?
Who does own it now?
You know what? You better look that up. I don't want to be wrong on this.
Who owns Realtor.com?
Just don't tell me it's a Zillow group.
It's not Zillow. I know that.
Yeah, I know that.
I got to put on. It's Move.
Okay.
Move owns it, and
so Realtor.com, the comparable.
Yep. It's owned by Rupert Murdoch, Fox News guy. Yeah, News Corp.
Wow.
So they sold the name Realtor to a guy that's not even an American. Right?
Not even in the real.
Where's the Australian? Is Rupert Murdoch Australian? Where's he from?
Yeah, something like
that.
Yeah.
All right. They literally just gave it to a foreigner. Come on, think about that.
Well, they probably sold it.
For how much?
For the amount that we had to pay the settlement.
No, they sold this years ago. They sold this. When did they sell it? 2.5 billion in 2016.
2016. Okay.
So 2.5 billion. So where's the money to fight this lawsuit? Where's the money?
Where's our check back for the sale?
There are 1.1 million members.
1.3
or 1.3. Okay. 2.5 billion divided by 1.3 million members. What is that?
It's a good chunk of change. That's all I know.
Yeah.
You're like a human calculator over there.
I mean,
it just comes back to, yes, we got sold out.
We keep getting sold out, and we got sold out with this. And part of it is because the Department of Justice weighed in. That's what I was talking about before, and they made it almost impossible for them to fight because they had to post a bond that was bigger than the net worth of the entire association.
Right.
So here's the problem. NAR for years, and I'm going to get to my website. In fact, I'm going to screen share here. NAR for years. I remember this years ago, they would all of a sudden you get an email or an alert that there is a NAR or local association legislative call to action where they would want us to put pressure on a state legislator or a congressman or somebody in government because they wanted an agenda passed. There's some really big ones like the property tax or the mortgage interest deduction was one that was going to go away. Actually, when Trump was president, and we successfully lobbied to keep that in there. There was one regarding flood insurance that was in there. It's all in my article. I got to try and find my article here.
By the way,
yeah,
2.5 billion divided by 1.3 members is 2 G's, $2,000. Where's my $2,000?
Yeah, I didn't get. Where's my free
check?
Where's my free 2 years worth of membership? That's really, that would have been great, wouldn't it have?
And we really, this isn't a topic to be taken lightly at all.
No.
And it's not an easy topic to talk about. We're putting ourselves out there.
Yeah.
To be quite honest with what we're doing and what we're saying here.
I know I'm going to get blowback for doing this, and this is in the infantile stages, and my life hasn't been threatened or anything yet. I'm sure stuff is coming. The idea of this pressure campaign is to really, I really want to rock the boat here.
Yeah.
And the boat needs to be rocked. And first of all, let's get back to that. So they had us doing calls to action for things far less important than this.
Mhm.
Now, here's my, in a nutshell, here's what it is. They couldn't win the battle legally in court, so
Mhm.
they had to settle. What is stopping them from getting the law changed? They've lobbied to have laws changed before. What is stopping them from lobbying to have an exemption to the antitrust laws? Now you might be thinking, well, why should you get an exception, realtors, to this law? Nobody else gets one.
Well, farmers do.
You're right. Farmers do. Actually, one of the first major exemptions to the Sherman Antitrust Act was Major League Baseball. Before the NFL, before anything
So
else.
Major League Baseball,
Yeah.
farmers, who else?
Labor unions.
Labor unions.
Here's the big one: the insurance industry.
The insurance.
The insurance industry has exemptions, and so I have that really in my open letter here, which I'm going to get to. Where is my open letter here? I've got to find it.
I see you.
You see me, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Open letter to NAR members. Okay.
Yeah.
So here's my open letter to NAR members. I'm going to share this instead. This is not. No, this is the NAR. This is the letter that I want people sending to NAR leadership right here.
Ralph created 3 simple steps to help you with that.
Yeah, we got a whole bunch of simple steps. Let me. So that's in the wrong spot. We're going to have to fix that. But in the meantime, here, I'm going to get to the main letter itself.
Well, by the end of this podcast, Ralph will have it all set up
No, it's right here.
and easy steps for you to get to.
Okay, so here's the times that we have successfully lobbied for Congress to do stuff recently. The National Flood Insurance Program, the Mortgage Interest Deduction Program, the Protect the Family Home Act. Yet in this case here, we haven't heard from our leadership. They haven't asked us to call our congressmen. They haven't asked us to call our senators, which means they haven't deployed their lobbyists to even talk to them. This hasn't even been part of the conversation.
No.
They don't care about us.
No.
All right. We have lobbyists. We are the largest trade organization in the country, and real estate is the second largest industry as far as a percentage of GDP. You know what the first is, Hank?
Pharmaceutical.
Hospitals. Yeah. The medical industry.
Oh, hospitals. That's
Yep.
right.
Yep. All right. The medical industry is number 1. Real estate is number 2. You think with having that much of the GDP under our wing and 1.3 million members that we should have some clout? All right. At least as much.
So.
The NAR should have at least as much clout as the NRA. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I mean,
where are these guys? Where are they? I haven't heard from a lobbyist. So here's what I've done. We need to hold NAR accountable. I have a letter in here. I explain all the stuff I just you and I just talked about the insurance industry, the agricultural industry, professional sports, having an exemption. And I explain why we should have one for real estate. And I don't mean a broad exemption where we get to do what we want and violate antitrust laws. I'm talking about a very narrow exemption that says that we should be allowed to, and it should be on a voluntary basis, screw NAR. It shouldn't be required to put it in the MLS with an offer of compensation. They're the ones that got us sued with their bullshit requirements. And it was a requirement. All right. By the way, they kept their clear cooperation policy, even though they stuck it to us. All right.
Wait, can you just say who the attorney was representing the whole case?
On the other side?
Yeah.
God, I can't remember the guy's name, but
No, but what kind of attorney was he?
oh, he's a personal injury lawyer.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Personal injury.
Ambulance chaser.
Ambulance chaser.
Yeah, ambulance chaser.
There we go.
So I have the letter right here. This letter here, which I'm going to make sure is in here, has every step. It has the letter that you can just cut. You literally click on it. It pulls up the letter. You can cut it and paste it into a new Word document, and then you address it to each of these NAR members. Kevin Sears, you're going to get letters. Eric Sane, you're going to get letters. Nate Johnson, you're going to get letters. Gregory Harabchik, Kevin Brown, Nakia Wright. These are all the people running NAR, okay? They all need to get letters. Not one of them, all of them. You go here, you click the link, you download the letter, you can save a copy, and then just put the right addresses in there. You're going to address it to each of them at the office in Chicago. You know what? Mail 2 letters. It's an extra buck. Okay. So you're going to have by the time you're done, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, $6. All right. Times 2, you're going to have $12 invested in this. All right. This is our careers we're talking about. Send a second copy to the Washington, D.C. office. Make sure let's weigh them down with paper. They have to open up all these envelopes. All right. If you go to the NAR website, they got a contact us page. I'm going to click on it right here. You're going to hit it. I'm going to go right to it. There it is. There's the contact us. You're going to put your name. You're going to put your email. You're going to put your NERDS number. You're going to put the topic here that's in there. All right. Let me go back to this main tab here. All right. And then I got a swipe file right here that you can click on. And it's going to give you what to say in the letter. Bam. There it is.
So you did all the work for us.
I did all the work. The work's done. So here you can take this. Dear our leadership, as a dedicated member of the National Association of Realtors, I'm deeply concerned, blah, blah, blah. I've done all of it. Okay. You can take this, cut it, paste it, put it in that contact us section right here, and then personalize it. Talk about how it's affecting you and your family and your business and how it's negatively affecting the consumers even in your community. It's all real. It's all completely real. All right. And people need to hear from us that this is affecting lives. All right. So once we're done with that, the pressure campaign on our leadership, they all need to get a letter. They all need to get a letter in 2 different places. They all need to get an email from the contact us page. I mean, if we got 10% of our members to do that, that's 100,000. 100,000.
I mean, all of them should be, because this is your
Yeah,
business.
but
that
I
you're
would
running.
like to see 100% participation, all 1.3 million of us. Okay. But even at 10%, that's pretty darn good. At 20%, at 30%, it's overwhelming to them.
Yeah.
It's absolutely overwhelming. And start paying attention to what's going on in your local boards. Start paying attention to what these rules are. You know, I never used to pay attention either because I'm too busy selling real estate. And the honest to God truth is these boards end up getting run by people who don't sell real estate because they just want to be in charge of something. And it sucks that you have to take time away from production to go protect your industry, but you need to, because the people running your board probably haven't sold a lot of real estate. Maybe a couple of them have. Either that or they're brokers on their own companies and they have an agenda. So it's a little bit of both. You have agents who don't sell real estate and broker owners with an agenda. All right. In both cases, neither of those agendas are in line with you as a highly productive agent. And if you're watching this, chances are you're a highly productive agent. That's why you're trying to learn. All right. Second prong is the outreach campaign to Congress. You can do the same thing. You're going to click on this little link here. If you don't know how to find who your representative is, you go there. There it is. You put in your address. I'm not going to put in mine right now. I don't need anybody egging my house.
Government link. Perfect.
Right. And once you put in your address, it's going to tell you who your congressman is, who your 2 senators are, what the mailing address is for them. There's the Washington, D.C. address, and there's the Constituent Services Center in their home district. I, again, recommend that you send one to both. Why not? Send one to both. All right. Then I have a swipe file link because they all have contact us sections and they have email addresses. If you can send them an email and do the contact us off their website, do them both. It doesn't cost you anything to do those both. A little bit of time. And again, personalize it. Take what I did word for word. If you want, paste it, but you can change it. You can personalize it. You can make it yours and tell them how this is affecting not just you as a realtor, oh, poor realtors, because that's how they feel at first until they realize there's 1.3 million of us. By the way, any other union that would speak up and say, we're not being treated fairly, their concerns are heard. But suddenly realtors are regarded, we're not important. We are important. There's 1.3 million of us, and we affect the second largest segment of the U.S. economy. Mm-hmm. We need to stop letting people define us as being irrelevant, and we need to start defining ourselves.
Stop telling us how to do our jobs.
Formatted letter link. All right. So I have the letter right here. There it is. Cut and paste. This is how you address a representative, their full name, House of Representatives, address, Washington, D.C., or you can call them the Honorable so-and-so if they're a senator. That's the proper etiquette. If you don't care about etiquette, whatever, make sure they get the letter. And again, you go here, add another paragraph, talk about how this affects your life. Talk about how this affects your community. Talk about the fact that suddenly, your kids aren't going to be able to go to college because your commission got cut in half or whatever it is you want to say. Probably because I was on the other side of the deal and I'm a better negotiator. But I digress. I'm joking.
Don't do a deal with Ralph is what he's saying.
No, I'm not.
Crushed.
I like deals that are win-win. All right. Everybody wins. All right. Third, this is the easiest one. Don't just skip ahead and do this one, but I got a change.org petition. I already put it there. It's ready to go. Here it is. Look at that. Our faces are on there. Defeating the war against buyer agent compensation. All right, there we are. And there's a share link too. So don't just sign it, share it, and share it with your clients. All right, make sure your customers understand this affects their home values. This affects buyers being able to buy a home. And if there's a smaller pool of buyers because they can't afford to pay their agent, or they just decide to forego representation and they overpay, that is going to hurt the housing market. This needs to be done not just for us, for the housing market. It is imperative that we jump on this and that we get people involved. So yeah, bottom line, our collective voice has the power to make a change. And I'm calling on all of our fellow realtors. Let's not just sit on our hands on this one. All right. This is not the one to sit out. They've had legislative calls to action before, and we've done stuff, and they've mobilized us. Now we're going to mobilize them, and we're going to mobilize ourselves. That's really where I'm going with this. I hope that this makes sense to you. By the way, my email address is going to be in this description. If you want to email me, if you have questions, if you want to call me on how to do this, please do. But do this. Follow the steps. Send the letters. Send the emails. All right. Make some noise. We can make a lot of noise right now. And we ought to.
Yeah.
We ought to.
Yep. Agreed. 100%. Dang, we covered a lot.
We did. This was a long episode because I wanted to talk about, first of all, how to handle it as an agent.
Yep.
Because we can't force this to happen. We can work our butts off. But at the end of the day, right now, we are working with the rules we're working with. Mm-hmm. Don't let that stop you from going out and making a living. All right. Do it. All right. Go out there, make the living, find a way to negotiate. But at the end of the day, if you want to restore transparency to our industry, you want to restore strength to the housing market, to the market overall. If you want your sellers' homes to retain their value and you want buyers to be able to get into the marketplace, it's really important we do this.
Well, thanks, Ralph. You've really cleared up a lot of things, and you put a lot of thought and effort into this campaign. And I know many agents are behind you in this fight to restore fair compensation. Mm-hmm. For those of you listening, don't forget to check out Ralph's YouTube video and his blog post for all the details. We'll be sure to include the links in the show notes. Before we wrap up today's episode, I want to emphasize that while this is a time of change in the real estate industry, it's also a time of opportunity, especially for agents who are willing to adapt, improve their skills, and make sure that they're negotiating the best deals for their clients. That's it for today's episode of the Team Ninja Real Estate Podcast. We'll be back next week with even more strategies to help you thrive in today's real estate market. If you liked what you heard today, don't forget to subscribe.
Share.
Karate chop that subscribe button.
And please leave some comments. Your comments are important. Your sharing is important. That's how we get the word out there. And take this video and share it with every agent you know.
This is a big one.
Every agent you know. And ask them to take the steps that are going to have a profound impact if we all do this on the overall housing market and on our careers. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you next time.